Recently, I was reminded of a novel I read many years ago by the Italian writer Italo Calvino. It's titled Invisible Cities. In the novel, the Venetian explorer Marco Polo meets the Mongolian Emperor Kublai Khan and describes some of the cities that the emperor rules. And here's a little bit of the flavor of the novel. The Great Khan's Atlas contains also the maps of the promised lands visited and thought, but not yet discovered or founded. New Atlantis, Utopia, the City of the Sun, Oceania, Tomoa, New Harmony, New Lanark, and Icaria. Kublai asked Marco, "You, who go about exploring and who sees signs, can tell me toward which of these futures the favoring winds are driving us?" Marco answers, "For these ports, I could not draw a route on the map or set a date for the landing. At times, all I need is a brief glimpse, an opening in the midst of a incongruous landscape, a glint of light in the fog, the dialogue of two passersby meeting in the crowd. And I think that, setting out from there, I will put together piece by piece the perfect city made of fragments mixed with the rest, of instants separated by intervals, of signals one sends out, not knowing who receives them. If I tell you that the city toward which my journey tends is discontinuous in space and time, now scattered, now more condensed, you must not believe the search for it can stop. Perhaps while we speak, it is rising, scattered within the confines of your empire. You can hunt for it, but only in the way I have said. Already the great Khan was leafing through his atlas over the maps of the cities that menace and nightmares and maledictions: Enoch, Babylon, Yahuland, Batua, brave new world. The Khan said, "It is all useless. If the last landing place can only be the infernal city, and it is there that, in ever narrowing circles, the current is drawing us." And Polo said, "The inferno of the living is not something that will be. If there is one, it is what is already here. The inferno where we live every day, that we form by being together. There are two ways to escape suffering it. The first is easy for many: accept the inferno and become such a part of it that you can no longer see it. The second is risky and demands constant vigilance and apprehension. Seek and learn to recognize who and what in the midst of the inferno are not inferno. Then make them endure. Give them space." There are a lot of ways of being trapped, stuck, stymied. You can go to the thesaurus for some more words along those lines, but all those words describe a certain kind of situation, a situation that can be either physical or mental, and sometimes both. I know you can make a list of ways to be stuck too. My list of ways of being trapped would always include getting stuck in the mud in the early spring. It's an occupational hazard for farmers. Mired up, we call it. In my dialect, we pronounce it marred up. When a truck or a tractor sinks up to its axles, you've got a problem. You're stuck. You're marred up. And that's a very real and physical way of being stuck. We all know about stuck in traffic. Uh, we know the feeling. There's been an accident somewhere up ahead, and there you are, only a few hundred feet from an exit, but there's no way you're ever going to get to that exit. You are stuck. And of course, nowadays with the pandemic, there's stuck at home, which we all know is better than being stuck on a cruise ship or in an airport or a foreign country or a jail or a prison or under a highway ramp. But still, it doesn't feel all that good because all of those stucks that I've named have both a physical component and a mental component. We can't go somewhere. We can't get somewhere, and that feels really bad. We're stuck. When you're stuck in the mud, you can point to the physical location where you are on a map. GPS can tell you where you are. But there are also mental maps, maps in the mind, the maps we use to think, to reason, to figure out where we are and where we're going. And often those are the ones that get us most lost, most stuck, those maps in the mind. And there are all sorts of them. Let me give you a simple example to think about the population of countries. Think of your mental map of, say, the United Kingdom. Often we think of a country as a country, and countries are, oh, I don't know, all the same size because, hey, they're countries. But no, that's not the case, of course. The United States has a population of 327 million people. Compare that to the United Kingdom, made up of England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland. And the United Kingdom has a population of 66 million. So the US has 5 times the population of the United Kingdom. The United Kingdom is made up of a whole bunch of countries, but compared with the US or India or China, there aren't that many people in any of them. Britain is the biggest, it has 55 million. Scotland has 5.3 million. Wales has 3.1 million, and Northern Ireland has 1.8 million. The Republic of Ireland has just short of 5 million people. Italy, that we've been hearing so much about, has 60 million people. Now, think about that as a mental map because the state of California has 40 million people and the state of Texas, 29 million people. So many of the nations that loom large in the minds of many of us Americans, because, yeah, US history, but also because maybe some of our ancestors came from them, many are smaller than many US states. Canada, up to our north, has 37 million people. Mexico, to our south, has 130 million, 3 times the population of Canada. Our mental maps of these nations often differ from the physical maps of these nations and the populations. Those sorts of erroneous mental maps are incorrect, but of course, they're not all that damaging. Some mental maps, however, are very damaging because they get us stuck inside what the British Romantic poet William Blake long ago called mind-forg'd manacles. And that line occurs in a poem called London. It was written in the late 1790s. Blake lived in London and he often went on long walks in the city. In the poem, he's walking along the River Thames and he sees, quote, "In every face I meet, marks of weakness, marks of woe." And he goes on, "In every cry of every man, in every infant's cry of fear, in every voice, in every band, the mind-forged manacles I hear." And as Blake goes on in the poem, it becomes clear that the sort of manacles that he's talking about are produced by poverty. Quote, "How the chimney sweepers cry, every blackening church appalls, and the hapless soldier's sigh runs in blood down palace walls. But most through midnight streets I hear how the youthful harlot's curse blasts the newborn infant's tear and blights with plagues the marriage hearse." That's the end of the poem. Children exploited, women exploited, young men forced into the army as hapless soldiers. And in the middle of all that exploitation and suffering, the blackening church and palace walls covered in blood. What's the answer to this, according to Blake? Freeing our minds from those mind-forged manacles, the manacles of the church, the manacles of government. Blake's point of view is clear. We human beings accept our own social oppression, free the mind, and get unstuck. For Blake, the answer is revolution. Political revolution, yes, but also artistic and mental revolution. Mental maps, well, they can keep us stuck somewhere, but we can also get away from them. Another way to look at this is with the term paradigm shift. And yeah, that term has become a bit of a cliche. When the philosopher and physicist Thomas Kuhn invented the term back in 1962, he was attempting to describe how a new concept can completely upend scientific thinking. Think Newton's Principia Mathematica. It caused a paradigm shift. Einstein's special theory of relativity caused a paradigm shift. After these ideas, thinking radically changed. All the maps were different after those ideas were published. The idea of a paradigm shift is useful. And nowadays, the term gets used in all sorts of places. The invention of the Walkman in 1979 is called a paradigm shift because suddenly people could choose the music that they took with them. The iPod changed the paradigm again in 2001 with digital music. And you can go on with that kind of list. But Thomas Kuhn had much bigger changes in mind, whole new ways of understanding reality, a time when every map from the past becomes antique. And that's the kind of paradigm shift that is occurring with the coronavirus pandemic. Think about 20 years from now. I suspect there will be a before the virus and after the virus when people start telling stories. Because let's be real, very, very few people wish to live in a time of radical social transformation. We remember them. The paradigm shift from Walkman, oh, that felt great if you had the money. And you don't have to listen to a transistor radio anymore when you're out walking. The paradigm shift we're experiencing today is not like that. About all I can say, if I want to wax prophetic for a moment about the outcome, is that those who dream of rushing into the arms of the past will be sorely disappointed. Those maps won't work anymore when this is over. The only way to go from here now is into the future, which is always a place with no maps. Last week, I enumerated some positive outcomes that could come from this time of ripping up all the maps and all the paradigms. For example, it could mean a new awareness of the interconnectedness of our planet and all of its living things. That's a good thing to change. It could mean a new awareness of the effect that human beings have on the planet and a new awareness of how we can radically change how we live in order to make the planet a better place to live for all its living things. It could mean an understanding that debt is a blight on the land and that equal opportunity for everyone is a right, not a privilege. It could mean that we realize at last that the vast income gap between rich and poor in this country actually makes life grim and dangerous for everyone. It could be that we finally see that we are all in this together, that every human being on our planet is our neighbor. What to do? Take off those mind-forged manacles. Blake had good advice for us. The key is seeing that they are there. What is it? What is the mind-forged manacles? And what to do? Well, first of all, we have to chuck those mental maps. We have to rip them up, throw them away. The paradigm has now shifted entirely. The cities those old maps pointed to were chimeras anyway. However, we have to realize that they were always fictions. They always were, but now we have seen some of the fictions. As Italo Calvino phrased it, there are two ways to escape suffering the inferno. The first is easy for many. Accept the inferno and become such a part of it that you can no longer see it. The second is risky and demands constant vigilance and apprehension. Seek and learn to recognize who and what in the midst of the inferno are not inferno. Then make them endure. Give them space. End quote. Now that's a destination worth heading for, even if we don't have a map. No, there aren't any maps to tell us how to get there, but Calvino and other compassionate people have pointed the way. As he said, seek and learn to recognize who and what in the midst of the inferno are not inferno, then make them endure, give them space, end quote. Most of us just don't have mental maps for this pandemic. That's where the anxiety comes from. But we know we have two paths on some math or other that we will become clear. One path, as Calvino pointed out, is to accept the inferno, to accept defeat, to yearn to return to the status quo. We know that many will do that. The other path, the path with no maps, is to say no. We will not run back to the inferno of the past that we knew. Rather, we will go forward into the unknown, ready to embrace a new kind of compassion, a new hope, a new story, a new dream of equity and justice. That is the uncharted territory. That is where the brave and the committed must go. Thanks for listening. You can find much more about humanism and what's happening at First Unitarian Society in Minneapolis by visiting our website at firstunitarian.org.